Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a little show that endeavors to bring forward the issues on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and yes, indeed, the wide, wide world. And joining me, my sidekick, as always, the jumping John Jurisic we all love, the Croatian sensation. And Johnny, there's so much going on right now. And first, just off the top, before we get into all that, the latest at home, Bonnie Henry, Dr. Bonnie Henry, and Minister Adrian Dix have announced that there are some relaxation in mandates. We can now have weddings and full funerals again. We can have more than 6 people out for dinner. And there's a caveat because the masks and the mandates still remain. You still have to have your passports if you want to get into restaurants. So everything's changed, but not completely.
Robin, I've always been okay with this. I want to follow the science. I want to follow the law. I get it. Places like Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, they're getting ready to end the requirements of the vaccine passports. I'm going to keep showing mine. I don't care if somebody doesn't want to see it. I'm going to pull it up on my phone and off we go to the races. Why is this so complicated? Follow the science, follow the law, follow people who have collectively hundreds and hundreds of years of medical experience. Why can we not? Okay, now, separately, people are frustrated. I get that. And obviously that is venting itself in all kinds of ways. But however, I'm going to follow what experienced professional scientists tell me to do.
And that's exactly what the vast majority of British Columbians and Canadians are doing. And that's why in British Columbia, I believe it's 90% of us now are double vaccinated. I mean, it's really
BC. Way to go.
Majority has spoken, and majority is trying its best to follow the mandates of people like Dr. Bonnie Henry, which I think is a very good thing. And we're also going to talk a little bit more in a few moments about what's been going on in the schools in regards to Omicron and the outbreak. It's not over. The mandates, they want to start to move the mandates away because of the trucker dispute, but the whole virus is still out there and people are still getting sick. We want to hear what's going on in our schools, and we're going to talk more about that in a few moments' time. But there's other things afoot as well in this world. Besides Omicron, we got what's going on in Eastern Europe, John.
Oh, there absolutely is, Robin. Swinging by in a couple of minutes will be Dr. Chris Kilford, president of the Canadian International Council. He's a Royal Roads professor, one of our most viewed interviews in the past year, former officer and attaché. He knows a thing or two about Russia. Can't wait to listen to him, but we don't have to travel as far as the Ukraine for political drama, do we?
No kidding. We've got tons of it right across the country, John. Prime Minister Trudeau preparing to use the Emergency Act to force truckers away from the border, and the borders have been cleared, which is really, really a good thing because it was really hurting our economy. And I frankly feel that Justin Trudeau has looked very weak in this whole matter. The Freedom Convoy dispute's been going on for 3 weeks. And the truckers arrived. They wanted to talk to government. They wanted to talk to the prime minister. He wasn't making himself available. They blocked downtown Ottawa for days on end. The Liberals sat back. The Conservatives seemed to take the truckers' side. We had people like Andrew Scheer down there doing selfies with the truckers and smiling away. And so now the restrictions are being pulled back. I believe that they're no longer going to be asking for the tests at the borders in the near future. So you would say, well, the truckers have won. But I don't know that the truckers are saying that because, well, their point is, well, we want all of these mandates lifted. We want it done immediately, and we're not taking any other solution. And, the minority cannot hold the entire country at bay. This isn't a people's revolt. This is still basically a fringe movement. Fine. Hold your protest, no complaint. You have the right to oppose the mandates. You have the right to oppose the vaccinations if that's where you stand. If you don't want to wear masks and you want to stand in a big crowd, I don't recommend it, but I suppose no one's going to arrest you for that either. But blocking the border with the United States and hurting our overall economy is totally wrong. And in Victoria, we've had 3 weekends now of honking horns and protests at the legislature, but they haven't been breaking the law. The folks are sick of the mandates. Hey, we're all sick of the mandates and are tired of COVID and the restrictions. But, that preventing people from being able to cross the borders is one thing. It's another thing entirely to be talking about COVID not being real, that somehow COVID is a myth, or it's manufactured by the media, or the media has created this and it's not a real crisis. It's a real crisis. People have been getting very sick. It's not just the flu. COVID-19 is a much more serious problem. That's why we've been having to do this for the last 2 years. So did Trudeau have to take the action of this emergency act? Well, you be the judge. Here's what some of the truckers were saying to Fox News.
We're not caving, we're not moving, we're not backing down.
Come to the table.
And I don't know what Mr. Trudeau is thinking, but we're holding the line. Just lift up the mandates and we'll be out of here.
Just know that every trucker out here, we're willing to go to jail, we're willing to lose our trucks, we are handing out tickets today, we'll just pay them, right? Nothing's going to stop us from accomplishing what we came here to do. It's just a matter of time until they realize that.
For us to leave here is not an option unless he is going to drop all the mandates and set his people free.
I'm tired of the mandates. I'm tired of all the division that it's causing. It's terrible. It's dividing families. It's dividing people in general all across Canada. It's no good.
So I can say, yes, truckers and your supporters, you have been heard. Time to get back to work. Time to let the mandates gradually dissipate. They'll be removed when it's safe to do so. And what do you think, John?
So much to wrap around here, Robin. So much. Okay. So the initial sort of momentum was to eliminate the folks did not like the mandates. That was the original core. Okay. Fair enough. In our society, you're allowed to complain about that. Okay. Then the truckers go, well, along the way, as they're going to Ottawa, well, we want our freedoms. We're protecting your freedoms. I'm really struggling hard to know what freedoms were removed as folks now in front of Ottawa blocking streets. You do not have a right to impact all of us with your actions. It took this government far too long to do something about it. This should have been done weeks ago. Nonetheless, not about these truckers. I think I'm going to blow up. Let's shift back to this other difficult situation in Ukraine. Russians have troops on 3 borders. And somehow they're pretending that, they're not going to invade. Give me a break. Canada and other countries have now removed their diplomats. But wait, is there a window of hope?
I think there is, John. And we have a huge military community living on Vancouver Island, centered in Victoria, the Navy, of course, but a lot of other military folks, ex-military folks, and people who are closely studying what's going on in the Ukraine. And, Canada has the largest diaspora of Ukrainians in the world. Oh. We have the highest and largest group outside of, I believe, Russia has more Ukrainians than Canada, but in the Western world, Ukrainians massively came to this country, and many people still identify themselves as Ukrainian, well over 1 million people. So here to discuss what's going on in that country and what's going on in Western Europe's response is Dr. Chris Kilford from Royal Road University, a director of the Canadian International Council, formerly a senior officer in the Canadian military and an attaché, and he's served in a number of countries on the Russian border. Let's zoom him in. And joining us now in the Rumble Room again is Dr. Chris Kilford from Royal Road University, and it's great to have you back in the Rumble Room.
I'm very glad to be here. It's always great to discuss these very important subjects. Yeah.
Well, it's a very important subject regarding what's going on in the Ukraine. And I know a lot of people on Vancouver Island are military or ex-military. They're watching it with heightened interest. A lot of other folks are watching it right across the country as well. And when we last had you on the program, you were talking about Vladimir Putin, and your feeling was at that time that he might be putting on a bit of a show, a very aggressive show, or saber rattling, if you like, and he might be reluctant to follow through with a real war. So how do you feel now?
Well, nobody likes to ever see this sort of situation develop where a country gets itself to a position where it has 140,000 troops or so deployed on another country's borders in 2022, and especially in Europe. We had thought these days were long gone. So how do I feel right now about this sort of thing? Oh, look, I mean, how did Putin get himself into this situation? This is what I spoke about before. And here we are. He's in this situation. He's actually, I think, unsure of what he's actually going to do next. And he's been goaded, if I can use that word, by the United States every step of the way. We hear endlessly now coming out of the United States and the various intelligence organizations that Russian attack is imminent tomorrow. And the Russians, of course, are saying, no, that's not the case. But, you know, look, the fact is they've put all these troops on their border, so on the Ukrainian border. So who do you believe at the end of the day? The only thing that is clear to me is that climate change is out the window, because there's been so many people shuttling back and forth to various capitals to try to diffuse the crisis. So that's that. And then I don't think this is actually about Ukraine, which is going to sound strange to folks. I think this is about a couple of other things. I think on the Russian side of the house, it's about Putin's position, where Russia's heading as a country. We know they're very poor overall. Once you get outside of Moscow and the big cities, the situation in the countryside is not good. There's opposition there. It simmers, and it's put down brutally when it does appear, but it's there. And I think Putin's worried about that. And then on the United States side of the house, this is about a couple of things. First of all, what happened in Afghanistan, which didn't make America look very good at all. And then bookending it on the other side are the midterm elections coming up in November, when the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate is up for grabs. And I think this is about very much the United States and the Democratic Party positioning themselves as being tough on Russia after the debacle in Afghanistan, of course, and now this. So it's about other things than Ukraine, and Ukraine, sadly, is stuck in the middle.
Great to have you back, Chris. I can't emphasize enough how honored we are to have such a military expert within our regional sort of network. Obviously, in Zoom, we could have you from anywhere, but you are here, Royal Roads in Victoria. So thanks for coming back. Inauspicious, I suspect. I mean, to have you back, we will, in almost all cases, have to have some kind of military conflict going on. So that, I don't know if that's so good. We might have to understand what other expertise you have. But in that line, you must be conversing with other fellow professors and other folks in your network. And are your viewpoints on this Ukrainian conflict widely shared? Are there differences of opinion about the imminent danger of Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think amongst the experts, the military folks, the academics who look at the current situation, there's always divisions about, will they or won't they, and who might win or lose out of all of these things. And I've said before that the only person that can really, the one individual will lose out of all of this is Putin. It doesn't matter what he does, right? Mm-hmm. Whether he leaves and then looks weak at home, or he attacks and the international community just comes in with the full weight of everything that they have at their disposal to cause grief for Russia. But of course, Ukraine loses because a battle would take place on their territory, and this would not be good. But there are a couple of things I'd like to raise with you. First of all, let's be clear. The United States, France, Great Britain, and others have terrific satellite capabilities that can peer into Russia and tell you what the Russian troops are having for lunch. So one of the things that they're able to do, of course, is to say, okay, yes, so there's 150,000 troops on the border, 140,000 troops on the border, but do they have the necessary medical support in place for a sustained campaign? Do they have the necessary food and fuel supplies? We see huge amounts of fuel being brought up to sustain a 30-day or a 60-day campaign. There are lots of telltale signs. Anybody can line up troops on the border, but you do need the support in behind them if you're going to sustain a campaign. So the question mark is, are we seeing this? And quite a few people are saying, no, we're not. So that's important. And the other issue, of course, is how well trained are these Russian troops? This is very key. Is Putin willing to risk a conventional attack into Ukraine against Ukrainian troops that have been receiving training from the West, including by Canada, for many, many years, and are not just going to roll over? This is not going to be the Iraqi army rolling over in the face of the Islamic State or the Afghan army fading away in the face of the Taliban. The Russian military forces would be up against a very tough enemy fighting for their home territory. And this has to be a calculation in Putin's mind. It's a risk to go in there. I said jokingly to a friend of mine the other day, what if the Russians were to lose? So there's a lot at stake here. And that's why when I look at the overall situation, it just seems to me that an attack on Ukraine by Russia seems not to be, I just can't see it taking place. As I said, this is about other things, and we're watching it play out.
Super to have Chris Kilford join us in the Rumble Room. Such a knowledgeable guy. He was a retired lieutenant colonel. He was an acting colonel and attaché based out of Istanbul, but he also served in other satellite countries around Russia for a number of years, places like Georgia and others, and knows that region very well and certainly knows a lot about Russia. Great to have him on the show. But we're going to swing over now, John, to something entirely different. We're going to take a look at some viewer mail.
Robin, this has become one of our most popular pieces, despite the fact we've just done one. I think we're going to do this regularly. 300,000 views, likely 200,000 comments. However, last week we received a note from a supporter of the new BC Liberal leader, Kevin Falcon. And he was pretty mad at our guest last week, former BC MLA Sheila Orr, and who didn't pull any punches at all, and had some real doubts about Falcon and his ability to unite the BC Liberals. So here's this response, okay? Have some fun with this. What an unbelievably bad take for 3 reasons. Number 1, if she thinks Kevin Falcon in 2022 is some hardline right-winger, she clearly wasn't paying attention during the leadership race. He ran as a moderate and focused on issues like childcare, mental health, and climate change.
Number 2, Kevin's internal staff team was composed of 50% federal Liberals and 50% Conservatives.
And number 3, Kevin Falcon received endorsements from a large number of federal Liberal MPs, former MPs, and candidates. So there's the other side of the coin. We did invite Kevin Falcon numerous times to speak on our show in January and most recently. And the invitation, Kevin Falcon, remains.
And we are still always trying to be even Steven on the Rumble Room. So, there's all this going on, John. There's so much happening. We've touched on a number of things. Let's swing back now for a few minutes about COVID and Omicron. It's everywhere. All sorts of people that I know and you know have had it over the last few weeks. And it's everywhere, I think, in part because kids are back in school and they're bringing it home to their parents and their grandparents. It's getting all over the community. And thank goodness, 90% of us have had double doses, and many of us have also had our booster shots. So no surprise that people are getting sick. What is happening in the schools? What's happening in terms of the worries of parents and grandparents? And, what is the response from that? We have somebody who can answer those questions.
Well, as a grandparent, I was very much wanting those questions answered. Here to talk about that situation within our public schools is the chair of the school board, Ravi Parmar. Let's zoom him in. And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room is Ravi Parmar. Now, Ravi, I first heard of you as a champion for the rebuild of the Belmont High School. Unbelievable. And then you and I actually had a podcast years ago. I think I had a bit more hair, in which case, but you're just prior to running as a trustee for the school board district. Now you're the chair of the trustees of the Sooke School District. It's great to have you in the Rumble Room.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. I think I had more hair back in the day too, but thanks so much to you and Robin for having me. It's a pleasure to be representing the Sooke School District and happy to speak to you. I'm joining
Absolutely.
you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nation. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, Ravi. We're now a month into the second half of the school year. We're all hearing about Omicron. Oh my gosh, it's all driving us insane. How have things been going in the classrooms? How have you been able to keep the pandemic at bay?
Pandemic at bay? I'm not sure if anyone has, John, but it's been challenging to say the least. I think when we went into December break, we heard very loudly, our board certainly did, that people were exhausted. First of all, our staff, who have just been going above and beyond throughout the pandemic and continuously being told how great they were doing and how we were asking for a little bit more. We're just exhausted. And I think that's the same for all of us and all of our families. And Omicron hit us hard. It's impacted all of us. I know I had COVID and I never thought I would. I thought, I'm doing the right thing, but I know my family got impacted. I know many other families were impacted by it, and they continue to be. And I think as we've returned from that break, it was, January's always been argued as the longest month of the year, and this has felt like the longest year, and we're already just at the beginning of February. And so I think it's fair to say the temperature check in our schools, and I think it's also fair to say this is across the province, is people are tired, and they're looking forward to the family day-long weekend and hopefully putting Omicron and COVID finally behind us. Because
the kids are tending to bounce back quickly. I mean, that's the general belief in the public, is that if you're younger, you may get it, but it's not going to probably be that bad. Is that your experience of the thing?
Yeah, I think that's the experience of public health, that as you've noted. But what I'll add to that is the resiliency that our students are showing tops that of us and our generations. They're just incredible. And so I know that they're tired, but they don't show it at all. If you go into schools, they've toughed it out. And I know that for some particular grades, not being able to do the typical things that you would be able to do during graduation is really difficult. But they found ways to be able to do it within a pandemic. And again, I just lift my hands up to them in gratitude for the resiliency they show each and every day.
Your school district in Sooke and Nanaimo, I understand, also have the boards have decided to ask all employees in the school districts to get vaccinated. First of all, how did that come about, and what's been the reception from the employees and the teachers?
Yeah, very tough decision, Robin, and thanks for bringing it up. We had many conversations beginning in October. As you'll know, throughout this pandemic, our boards across the province have been relying on Dr. Henry, public health, to be making these sort of public health decisions. And we were quite disappointed when Dr. Henry didn't make a decision and she left it up to boards, not because we felt like we were the best in making these decisions or not, but we really relied on public health to make public health decisions. I am no public health expert. I can tell you that. We happen to have a public health nurse on our board, a retired one, so she provides us some health advice from time to time. But it was a very difficult decision. And so October, we began the process with lots of public consultation, lots of engagement with our Indigenous rights holders, all of our staff, and it was mixed. At the time, we heard from obviously a vocal group of people who were opposed to vaccines, and we heard from a lot of people who were in favor of vaccines. Just before the December break, just before Christmas, we were finally heard back from what's called BCPC, the British Columbia Public Sector Employees Association, that finally provided boards the legal advice and the process if we wanted to move forward with it. And our board was the very first board in the province to move towards bringing in a proof of vaccination procedure for new hires. So essentially, I think it was December 18th was the day, effective December 18th, any new hires that the district was bringing on had to provide proof of vaccination, or of course, could be exempt under human rights legislation or medical exemption. It wasn't until following that in January through Omicron that we continued more engagement, and then we made the decision to implement a proof of vaccination procedure for all existing hires, and we're just in the process of doing that now.
So if I'm a teacher or I'm an employee, I don't want to get the vaccination, what happens? I can still do my job, but I have to get tested on a much more regular basis. How does that all work?
You got it, exactly. So we're in the process right now where staff are providing their proof of vaccination information. And for anyone who doesn't provide that or is unable to provide that, we consider them unvaccinated. And so they have two options. And I want to make very clearly, we're not laying them off. They're not being terminated. So they have two options. One is that they'll undergo regular testing. Testing will be provided by the school district at the cost of the school district. And so there's no cost borne on those employees. Or if those employees don't want to get tested regularly, I think it's about once or twice a week right now that we're working with public health and just clarifying that. That'll begin on March 7th. They can go on extraordinary leave without pay. And so far in terms of that feedback, I've heard from staff who are obviously very pleased with this direction. They felt that it was safer to have those who are vaccinated in our schools. Resounding feedback from our families as well. And I've got to tell you, I got voicemails because my phone number at the local level, my phone number is available on the website from people as far as Ontario, not very happy with what we were doing in Sooke. And some unfortunate comments as well, lots of racism and stuff that, I'm used to, but a lot of people, one in particular, one person who said that if I was actually born in Canada, I would know the values of Canada, and I proceeded to start singing the national anthem, which I can tell that person I know as well.
Ravi, I have a child in the Sooke. I have a grandchild in the Sooke School District. I know some parents are therefore very pleased that their kids could return to class. Sanity. I'm telling you, it was a saving grace. Others have been reluctant, however. Are most kids back at school now? And how have you kept parents informed about all of this activity? Because that's certainly been something I've heard. How are they to know what's going on day to day for their peace of mind, for grandparents' peace of mind?
No, that question is very timely because I just got off the phone with the Sooke Parents Education Advisory Council, having an updated conversation with them about what they're hearing from fellow parents across the district. We've seen many students, if not almost all of our students, return to school. There certainly are an increase in numbers over the last couple of years of those who have chosen homeschooling or have chosen distance learning. But one thing that I've learned, John, very clearly throughout this pandemic, and what is a value of our district, is student voice and choice. And so I heard very clearly from families that they did not enjoy the distance learning or the virtual learning. My household is one of them. We struggled with that form of learning. But I also heard from a lot of families that their child succeeded with virtual learning at the secondary level, where they were able to choose what hours they dialed in. They maybe got a chance to wake up a little bit later because they had a late shift the night before at work. And so I think one thing that we're going to be taking out of this from Sooke is doing more to ensure that we're providing that comprehensive learning based off of the need of the child. Because I think as a system, we focus a lot of time and attention, and no disrespect to you, John, as a grandparent, or to the parents or to the teachers and all of the educational staff. We need to do a better job of focusing on the student and the needs of student. And that was, as you know, John, something that drove me to want to run to be a trustee all those years ago. And obviously it's been a little while, and celebrating my 10-year anniversary of graduating from Belmont this
Has
year.
it been that
which,
long for us? Oh
yeah,
my
I know.
gosh.
It's scary. It's scary. I've said it. I'm not going to mention it anymore because I'm terrified of even thinking about it.
No, you're so old. I bet you Muzz Bryant was still there. That's such a long time ago, right?
You know what? I would not be surprised if Muzz is still at Belmont. I remember hearing him on the announcements all the time. He's a fantastic substitute teacher back in the day. But absolutely, it's something that, to my core, my belief is that we need to do a better job of valuing student voice and choice, and that's something that I'll be taking as a lesson from this pandemic.
You know, you bring up substitute teacher, and that's my final question for you is the substitute teacher situation. I want to ask about teachers that have been anxious about coming back to the classroom. I mean, a lot of us have been anxious about being out anywhere, wearing masks, and then you think you're in a classroom situation. Maybe you have some other illness issues. A lot of teachers are certainly not impervious to that. I have a friend who's a substitute teacher. She's decided to take this year off because she simply keeps hearing about outbreaks in different schools. She has other outstanding health issues. She says it's just not worth it. Do you have enough teachers? And if you do have a shortfall, are there people still willing to step in and teach in this kind of a situation?
Yeah, we've been on the brink of functional closures for a long time now. I think on average last week we had about 120 teacher absencees daily, which is a lot for our district. It's not typical. And so we've had to deploy staff in the school board office. I joke that I typically call my superintendent from time to time in the mornings. And as you know, a superintendent is the CEO of the organization, also holds a teacher's license. And so sometimes there are chances where he may be deployed to a school as well, because he's got that license and we want to keep ensuring a continuity of education. And so to answer your question, Robin, I don't think we have enough teachers in the long term. We're going to have to do a lot of work. And the challenge in our district is because we're growing so rapidly. You know, if you look at Langford, and I think you guys have had Stu on the call before, and that growth is not stopping. COVID has not slowed down the growth in Langford, Colwood, or Sooke. We're hiring all those substitute teachers as permanent teachers. Used to be a thing back in the day. When I was in school, that a substitute teacher was a bit of a career for a few years before you became a permanent teacher. We're in a position now where we're hiring teachers that are literally just graduating and finishing their practicums, which seems unheard of, but it just speaks to the growth and the need for our district. And so it's not just teachers. EAs we're very concerned about, custodians, bus drivers. We bus 4,000 students a day, and I'll make the pitch on your show that if there are any bus drivers who are looking for work, Sooke's a place to be. But yeah, the staffing issue across the province is an issue, and certainly one that we're monitoring in Sooke as well.
Great to have Ravi Parmar on the show, so forthcoming. And, this was just a jam-packed show, Johnny, and it's hard to believe that it could actually be coming to an end, but that's the case. So maybe you could again tell people how they can follow our show, subscribe, and like the Victoria Rumble Room.
I love doing this. Clearly, a lot of people have, around 300,000 to date. So holy mackerel, thank you. Thanks for joining us. How do we do it to those that haven't yet done? That's the 5 or 6 in the world remaining. Facebook, yes. We have a Twitter page. We also have a YouTube page, which is our sort of server. If you want to spend your nights watching us, which many do, please go to that page. And then we have a website, which is a podcast site, and enables us to hook into those big streams of podcast activity like Apple Tunes, Google Podcasts, etc. And we have our very entertaining other platforms, that being Instagram and TikTok. And so, unfortunately, now it's time to say goodbye. Oh, I'm so sad, but we'll be back soon. To all my friends and family, to our many viewers, my name is John Jurisic, the Croat with the mostest.
It was a stretch, but I loved it anyway. I'm Rockin' Robin Adair, and rumble on!